Eskom says they are working with the Electoral Commission to minimize the risk of power cuts during the upcoming local government elections. The power utility gave assurances that electricity would be available until after voting has taken place. This coming weekend, the IEC will accommodate special votes, while the rest go to the polls on the 1st of November. Dawie Scholtz is the election analyst from Boston Consulting Group and joins us now to look at the impact of load shedding on the polls and also on voter sentiment. Dawie, thank you for making time. You have been working on campaigns before. You have seen even internal tracking polls. What have you seen when it comes to the impact of load shedding on particularly ANC numbers?
Hi, Clement. Yeah, it's really a tough one for the ANC to have something like this the week before the election. Typically, it annoys voters quite a lot when something like this happens, and it typically annoys kind of voters to the detriment of the ANC in the polls, which is a potentially challenging phenomena, right, for the ANC. So I think they should be concerned. And the other impact it has is it just inflames turnout, right, for voters that are kind of a little bit annoyed at government, but are maybe going to vote, maybe not going to vote. This really inflames turnout from that perspective, and gets those voters out voting, which is also not good for the ANC. So that's the one element, and then the other element is just it creates opportunities for the other opposition parties to kind of talk a little bit about this issue, right? Action SA is already out today saying that they would get lots of independent power producers producing power for Johannesburg. The DA is talking about cutting power to e-tolls and I don't know whatever else. So it creates a good messaging opportunity and creates some difficulties for the ANC in the last week before the election, I think.
Yeah, and the political parties are really running with this. The DA leader, John Steenhuisen, was delivering a message on the load shedding crisis earlier today. Some people, Dawie, think of it as an issue that doesn't particularly fall under the parameters of local government. Yes, it affects you at local government, but it can only be fixed at the top, they would say, right? So some would then suggest, even if they punish the ANC and vote for other parties, what can they do really to fix that, for that local government to fix Eskom?
Yeah, you see, there's a lot of complexity in this issue, right? So obviously it's a national government competency to provide electricity for the entire country. But there are certain elements to this that local governments have some influence on, right? So, for example, the interaction between the local government and independent power producers. We know that in the city of Cape Town, for example, they have a special agreement with this hydroelectric plant in that area, the Steenbras Dam, that actually allows them to go to stage 1 when the rest of the country is on stage 2. Or they're on stage 2 when the rest of the country is on stage 3. So they basically save a stage because of that. We saw just over the weekend the ANC actually tried to say that they had put that into place with the Kendal power station that's in the East Rand, which was, of course, a complete disaster at the end of the day because the Kendal power station doesn't have the power to do it. But just shows there is some things that smart local governments can do. But you're right, it's certainly not going to be able to fix Eskom at the local government level.
Yeah, and I'm glad you spoke about the complexities. I mean, in one way or the other, Western Cape is already doing it, where they're able to offset load shedding for their residents when it's either stage 1 load shedding, etc. But yeah, we tried it here in Gauteng, the mayor, and it was just a spectacular failure. But the city of Johannesburg says it's still in discussions with Eskom, probably something that will be implemented at a later stage. But this impression they were trying to create that, oh, we've got this thing, we're going to help you, and it's just 6 days before elections, didn't really work out. Do you think South Africans are somehow getting used to it? I mean, I found myself celebrating having power the other day because for days we were subjected to darkness. So do you get a sense that it's still a big issue among voters?
Look, I think access to electricity is a really big issue for voters, right? But of course, access to electricity is a bigger issue than just Eskom load shedding, right? We know there are portions of the country, particularly in townships, particularly in more rural and poorer areas, that are just underserviced by electrical infrastructure, right? And we know that this has been a really big issue in the Joburg campaign, particularly in Soweto, right? I think every time the ANC has campaigned in Soweto, there have been discussions about people who have been without electricity for a long period of time, basically due to infrastructure issues and the infrastructure not existing to have a reliable power supply. So yes, load shedding is one issue, but there's a different issue which is electricity provision in general, and from what we're seeing on the ground, it really does seem to be a serious frustration. And I think whether people experience it through shoddy infrastructure, whether they experience it through load shedding, it definitely affects voter preferences and people's willingness to go vote, and I think also some people's willingness to consider a different party, clearly based on the polling that I've seen in the past.
Yeah, Dawie, thank you so much for helping us understand what the impact of these power cuts. The whole week, by the way, until Saturday, we are going to be experiencing power cuts. What's the impact of that on ANC numbers on the 1st of November? That's Dawie Scholtz, elections analyst from Boston Consulting Group.